Hello, Serious Survivor here. Want to do a quick sound check. Had a few technical difficulties a little bit ago. Want to make sure everything's working out all right and everyone can see it. All right. Looks like it's coming through this time. Not sure what happened. I had to reboot and take care of a couple things. Uh, but I hope everybody's having a good night tonight. It's been a really interesting week. Well, it's been a really interesting year so far. It's been like a roller coaster ride if we think about it. 2021, and the bad part about that being a roller coaster ride is, you know how when you get on the roller coaster and you got that first big hill, you go up and then you reach the top and then you have to go down. And I feel like we're still on that hill going up. Everything's moving really slow to a degree, but we're right at that pinnacle to where we're fixing to cross over the top, and there's nowhere to go but down from there. All right. But before we get started, a real quick word from our sponsors for this video. Now, inflation isn't something we've heard of for a while, is it? But last month, the inflation rate in the U.S. had the highest rise in 29 years. You heard that right, 29 years, 1992. That's a big problem for all of us with food and gas and everything else going up. But it's terrible if you're planning on retiring anytime soon. You need to put an inflation dam up to stop it from wiping out the value of your savings and investments. It's not too late. Noble Gold specializes in retirement planning and IRAs. So their team of experts is your first stop, and they make it so easy to do. This month they're offering a 1-ounce American Eagle solid silver proof coin with every IRA or 401k taken out. Not many people can relax when inflation is this high, but like thousands of others with Noble Gold, you'll be okay. Visit our website at noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. All right. All right. How's everybody doing tonight? I hope you're doing great. Hope everybody's doing great out there. We're going to talk about a lot of things tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the cyber attacks. And there was one when I first started this live stream. Billy, if you could possibly put that up in the comments again, because I caught a glimpse of it as my screen was freezing up over here. But it was really interesting that there was another major hack that occurred, or was just, the news was just broke recently. So something that, just ties right into everything that we're talking about. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to talk about what's called the ATT, basically the UN Arms Treaty. And we're going to read some key excerpts from that. And we're going to talk about how that ties in to a lot of different things. And it's a lot of crazy things going on right now. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Billy. But that's even more. And, it's really getting weird with these cyber attacks. And when we get into it in a second, some of it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. But start with, just wanted to mention a couple of things that are coming up, and in the new spending package that's being, I guess, passed or going through Congress right now, they're talking about giving the IRS $50 billion more dollars in their budget to go after people who aren't paying their taxes, and they're leveraging this like it's going after corporate entities that are getting out of paying taxes, and a lot of them do. But when we look at this, we look at it, $50 billion to be given to the IRS, and their annual budget right now is only $11.5 billion. So they're going to increase it by almost, 5 times there, almost about 4.5 times they're going to increase their budget by, and they're expecting this to bring in about $140 billion a year in extra revenue. Well, that's concerning. That should be concerning to us, because if they don't bring in that whole $140 billion in extra revenue from the large companies, then basically they're going to start coming after everybody else for it. I mean, the increased IRS presence is not good news for anybody. Not good news for anybody, and we know that. Now, some of the things that I'm going to be doing on the channel this week, since I'm out of work right now for my surgery, my ACL surgery, got some things coming up. Got some good, interesting product reviews. One of them that I'll be putting out is, I don't know anybody that would be interested. I really like these, a lot of stuff like this. It's the FLIR One. This is a thermal imaging camera that plugs into your cell phone and gives you really high quality thermal images. It's so far, when I've been testing it, it'll pick up a thermal signature from well over 100 yards away. And that's a pretty handy tool to have, especially if you're in a survival situation. So that's one thing I'm going to be doing this week. Another one I'm going to be reviewing too is this Geiger counter. It's a Geiger counter, radiation detector that plugs directly into your cell phone. If you got an Android, it plugs in like that, but if you got a iPhone like I do, you do have to buy the extra adapter like that. Now, I'm not a spokesperson for those companies or anything. They're just something that I like personally, and I'll be putting out some really short videos on those this week, and it'll be pretty cool on those. All right. And that's a pretty severe hack that you're talking about there. And what we're starting to see now is, not just the United States. The United States has been targeted for so long with these cyber attacks that, I hate to say it, but a lot of people have gotten used to it. A lot of people don't even pay it attention anymore. But now we're seeing it spread to basically not just all the countries in the world, but all the industrialized nations in the world. And it's spreading to those, and the hacks are getting more and more severe. They're getting more robust in their attacks. And I guess you say they're getting braver and braver. And why wouldn't they? I mean, they're getting away with it. Whoever's doing this is getting away with it, which makes you think, how is this really some rogue or renegade group, or even 4 or 5 different groups like this trying to be pinned on? How are these rogue groups doing all this damage without someone being able to determine and locate where they are? I mean, with the level of sophistication that not just our government has, but other governments in the world too, they can't tell me that they can't track down where this is going. Follow the money. Follow the money. If they're getting their ransom paid in Bitcoin, there has to be a way to track that. Now, I'm not an expert in that field, but common sense, just tells me that there is a way, especially with the statements the Russian government put out about their new digital currency that's going to be coming out. And we'll be talking about that in a little bit too. But I wanted to touch on gasoline a little bit, and the price of oil and how that's, really going to affect us. Demand for gasoline is expected to keep climbing during the summer as the economy reopens and families hit the road for long overdue vacations. Gasoline demand is averaging about 9.1 million barrels a day nationally. That's just in the U.S. OPIS said, citing federal energy data. That demand could increase to 9.6 million or 9.7 million barrels a day come July and August. So, I'm reading this comes from back early June, this article. And all of this comes as oil prices have risen above $70 a barrel. Pump prices in central Ohio are averaging almost $4 a gallon, according to AAA fuel supply gauge. And we, I don't want to say we put ourselves in this crisis, but someone put us in this oil crisis that we're starting to see. It's not really a crisis, but it's just a supply and demand issue. We are now purchasing oil from overseas again because our oil here, was shut down. All federal lands, drilling and oil, getting any type of natural resources was banned. Alaska was banned, and the pipeline was shut down the first day of the office. So all of our natural resources, our oil production, I'm not sure what the number is, but it's been cut down drastically. So now we're forced once again to rely on foreign nations for the fuel that powers our vehicles and our everyday lives in some cases. And we're seeing those prices go way up. I filled up my truck yesterday, and it was $4.25 a gallon. Now that was premium. I put premium in it about every other time, but that's still very expensive. You can't really afford that for long term. I hear you. Went from 11 to 25 miles a gallon. Yeah, I drive my main vehicle is a Yukon XL, and I love it, but I don't love the gas mileage. In town, I might get 10 miles to the gallon. Out on the interstate, though, it does fairly well. I can get about 20 to 22 on the interstate, but in town, it drinks gas like crazy. So this has an impact on everyone. And it's not just going to have an impact on us, these gas prices going up, but it has an impact on all the goods being delivered. And especially now, when we couple that with the fact that the delivery system has a shortage of drivers right now. So if there's a shortage of drivers and then the prices of gasoline are already high and they can't deliver enough to get to all the locations, then this is just going to really, cause it to increase that much more. And we're going to feel this pinch throughout this month. I mean, this is starting now. It's not something we're predicting. It's something that we're seeing right now every day as we go to the store to put gas in our vehicles. Mr. Biden's explicit policy goal is to reduce U.S. oil and gas production. Yet his administration is now imploring the OPEC oil cartel to pump more oil to the U.S. so gas prices don't rise more than they already have. And that, be nice if we can make our own, get our own oil, wouldn't it? I mean, I sort of think we were there at one time, and all that was put to a halt. And look at the damage that's been done in 6 months. 6 months. Imagine 3.5 more years. This damage has been done in 6 months. Oil prices climbed to a 6-year high on Tuesday after the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Companies in Russia failed to agree on increasing production quotas. Last spring, OPEC slashed production quotas after crude prices plunged to $20 per barrel amid economic lockdowns and a price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia. So they're not wanting to. The Biden administration did contact the OPEC, oil exporting countries, and asked for them to increase production. And from what I read earlier today, they're talking about they may increase it, but it's going to be just a slight increase, not enough to bring prices back down. As a matter of fact, it probably isn't going to be enough to even affect prices. We're seeing gas go up now, and it's not going to stop going up. We had our own supply, and now we don't. We're just sitting on it, and we can't use it. And for what? Why? The real thing that gets me about this is you shut down all this stuff in the United States that produces oil and that transports the oil, like the pipeline, under the idea of climate change, climate. We want the environment to be safer. We're worried about the environment with all this, but yet you'll call the countries overseas and ask them to ramp up their production to supply our needs. I mean, if you really cared about the climate, then he wouldn't be calling them. I don't know what he would be doing, but it's crazy, and it's just one of those things that doesn't make a bit of sense. It doesn't make a bit of sense, not with the reasoning they're given. They're given the reason that, we stopped doing this drilling and all this to save our climate. Well, what are you going to do? Just destroy the climate on the other half of the earth if that's what's happening, I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Some other things Mr. Biden has done in office. We know that he shut down the pipeline, so we don't even really need to talk about that. And on day one, he also rejoined the World Health Organization. We know about that. And also, Fauci confirmed the United States will join what's called COVAX, a WHO-led initiative to distribute vaccine doses worldwide. Biden has promised to rejoin the Iran nuclear deal. Now, the Iran nuclear deal, what we're seeing right now with that is it should be raising alarms across the world. It should be raising alarms across the world. Iran admits, they go on TV and admit that they are now enriching uranium to 80%. And this is almost weapons grade, high weapons grade. It only has to be, 80% can be used in a fission bomb, And once they reach the 90 to 92%, then, they've got weapons of, extremely powerful weapons at that point. they were restricted to, if I'm getting the numbers right, it was below 10 to 20% in the beginning. They weren't supposed to be able to enrich uranium past commercial purposes, which is a very low percentage. It doesn't have to be enriched to a very high level to, use it in a nuclear facility. But they've continued and they continued and they continued, and now Biden is wanting to get back in that deal with them. I mean, nobody really thinks that Iran is going to back up and stop enriching uranium at 80% just because they go into some deal with Biden. And the thing is, what will happen there is, if Biden does get back in that deal, then he's going to release or free up some of the sanctions, giving Iran millions, billions of extra dollars to fund whatever activities that they're needing to fund. So that's not really, in my opinion, a great idea, but it looks like it's coming. Biden also said during his campaign that he was going to rejoin the UN Human Rights Council. And one of the others that's going to be, we already see our economy taking a hit, but we're going to see it take a bigger hit as soon as he rejoins this. And it's what was called the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's now called the CPTPP, Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. And when we enter into that, then, that's really going to affect our economy even worse. It's going to affect our economy even worse, what's left of it. All right. And Biden also wants to enter back into what's called START, the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty with Russia. Now, the U.S. and Russia, both backed out of that deal, and it's basically an arms reduction treaty. Russia, there's no possible way that they could actually stay in that deal. Of all the industrialized nations in the world that have nuclear weapons, we are probably at the bottom of the list as far as upgrading and staying up with technology with our nuclear weapons. China doesn't have anywhere near the amount of nuclear weapons we have, but the ones they do have are more advanced and probably more powerful than the majority of what we have. So we are behind the times with our nuclear arsenal. A large portion, we look at it, there's thousands upon thousands of nukes here in the U.S. A large portion of those, were built in the 50s and 60s, literally. So they have those type of delivery systems, and, it's not going to be sufficient to get through any type of modern country's defenses these days. You're talking about nukes that were built 50, 60 years ago. So it's just not going to work out very well. So that's a pretty bad situation. All right. Yeah, they could easily use gas to basically, like you said, enslave us there, Gator, because you think about it, back in the old days, well, before my time, people rode horses. They didn't go anywhere that they couldn't literally walk to or ride a horse to. But now people work, an hour drive away from their homes. If the price of gas goes up to $10 a gallon, a lot of these people just aren't going to be able to afford to go to work. And it's a very difficult situation when we think about these cyber attacks. Cyber Polygon 2021. I was hoping to have a little more information on it tonight, but they haven't really come public with a lot of the details of a lot of the things that they took out of it. So we'll be looking at that a little bit later. But we know that it was an attack on the supply chain. We're seeing these attacks increase on a daily basis. They're increasing on a daily basis. We don't ever hardly have a day to where there's not a major attack somewhere, either in the U.S. or in the world. And they're proving through all this what they can do. And I think they've already proven it. We are at war right now, digitally. We are at war because we're being attacked on every front. Our healthcare systems, our government agencies, our financial institutions, our internet service providers. And our grid is going to be the next one. And a lot of this may have been just, practice to disrupt everything and then eventually finish up with a grid down style of attack. If we think about a grid down attack, they don't have to take it down in the entire nation. And, they may not even have to take the grid down. If they can stop the flow of gasoline and diesel in the nation, then they've essentially stopped people in their tracks at that point, because you can only run on a tank of gas for so long. And at that point, I'm stuck either where I'm at or at home. and they can slow things down a lot like that. And then if they disrupt the food chain to go along with that, then we're out of gas. People are running low on food because they weren't able to stock up, and then they follow up with a grid down after that. It's going to be total chaos. And this is the kind of thing that we are facing. And, I don't want to be negative about the situation, but there's nothing really positive that we can take out of any of this. The only positive thing that we can take out of it is that we are prepared, as prepared as we can be as people. Of course, a military invasion, things like that, it's hard to prepare for that other than arming yourselves and training, things like that. But this type of event, we can stockpile, we can get a lot of goods put back, and we can take care of ourselves for a while. But, it's getting worse, and it's getting worse every day. All right. And one of the things that about the grid down that I wanted to mention is, if I can find where I put that one paper at. Okay, I'll come back to that then. All right, this ties into what we were talking about just a few minutes ago when we mentioned, digital currency. And there is a page I'm going to read from right here. And this page, it basically says, it's an article on the internet, and I'll post a link. I read it in multiple places, but this happens to be the one I'm looking at now. So this one here, it basically says, it's Russia talking about starting a digital currency, and they're going to call it the digital ruble. Russia's central bank is exploring a two-tiered digital ruble that would allow users to restrict certain types of purchases, and all transactions would be recorded on a centralized ledger, according to a Cyber Polygon 2021 discussion. So this is something else that's coming out of Cyber Polygon. But what concerns me about it isn't so much that Russia's doing it. It's not where it's coming from, but it's the way that it's constructed, the way that it's built. And the way that it's built is basically, it's a digital currency, and they're wanting to do away with cash completely, and move to this digital currency. And a statement from Alexei Zabatkin, which was one of the spokesperson from Russia at the Cyber Polygon 2021 convention, said the Bank of Russia will maintain the centralized ledger on the Bank of Russia's technological platform, and all transactions will be recorded on this ledger. So he's basically saying that once they implement digital currency there, that the Russian government isn't just going to implement it, but they're going to track every purchase that's made. They're going to track every purchase, every transaction from everybody, every company, or every organization. They'll basically keep track of it from beginning to end. And, that's the kind of thing that's spreading throughout the world right now. We hear about digital currency here in the U.S., our digital passports, our digital wallets, digital IDs. I mean, this is coming, and what's so bad about this is this really restricts, like it says, they can even, the government can even has the ability to restrict people from buying certain things. So this digital currency, they can restrict it. They can say, well, you can use it on this website, but you can't use it at this store. And there's nothing you can do about it because that's the restrictions they place on it when they give it to you. And those restrictions could be different for every person, the article goes on to say. I could give my kids digital currency and say you can't buy candy with it. Or I could give digital currency to someone else and say you can't buy, alcohol with it, or you can't buy, groceries with it. And that type of restrictions on the money that you earn and make, that right there is too much. It's way too much. All right. Now, door-to-door vaccine. Well, before I get into that, we do have a giveaway tonight, too. I forgot to mention that at the beginning of the video. We got 2 products here to give away. One of these is, I don't know how well you can see it in the camera here, but is a survival belt. It's a very thick, sturdy web belt, and it has a magnetic buckle. Magnetic buckle, and it's pretty good. I got a few of these, and I bought a bunch of them a little while back, and they're pretty cool. It's pretty strong. That's what I like about it. For a magnetic buckle, it's never come loose. The other one that I wear, it's never come loose, and it's fully adjustable. And we'll also be giving away a first aid kit for anybody that needs a first aid kit, and we'll be doing that after the live stream towards the end of it. And some pretty cool. I like the belt. I think the belts are pretty cool. I got one I keep with my gear, and I think it's pretty cool. Now, with all the attacks we've been seeing, all this that we've been hearing over the last few months, especially maybe even a year or two, and the fingers are pointing at Russia. The mainstream media, Russia, and a lot of sources are Russia's doing this, and maybe they are. I don't think I'm ever really going to know unless someone just comes out and admits to it one day. But Iran was also hacked yesterday. Okay. And their major rail system in Iran was hacked yesterday. And Iran is an ally of Russia. So if these are Russian groups that are doing it, it doesn't make much sense that they would be attacking Iran too. There's too much here that just doesn't add up. It doesn't add up to what we're being told. It's not as simple as a Russian hacking group or set of groups attacking all these different places. It's not that simple. They have to have something powerful behind them to be able to do what they've been doing for so long and get away with it. You can't get away with the amount of cyber attacks that these groups are, supposedly have done up to this point, unless you have someone protecting you, unless you have a world power protecting you, because the average group is not going to get away with this, not repeatedly, not every time, and be as bold as to, we'll take a $70 million ransom, just send it here, and, cyber, Bitcoin or whatever it's going to be in. And it just doesn't add up. And, then we have an administration talking about Russia did it. What did we hear all of last year and all leading up to the election? Russia. And now it's the same thing again. Russia. And if we look back at the election, it wasn't Russia messing with the election. It was people here in the United States. So it makes us wonder, what's the possibility that, it could be homegrown here? And the sophistication of the attacks, the scope of the attacks, it's not a small group. It's not 2 or 3 people doing this. This is a pretty large group, and they're going to have to be backed pretty well, because to have a computer, to be honest, that can do distributed denial service attacks, which are pretty sophisticated attacks, or as far as not so much sophisticated, but powerful attacks. And it's very, very expensive to build computers that can do the kind of hacks, do the kind of, hardware, do the kind of stuff that these computers are doing. I've got a very expensive computer, but it probably couldn't do the type of attacks that these are doing. And for them to do that, it's not like on TV where somebody just pulls out a laptop and they just hack into something. It's a little more complex than that. And it takes some good equipment to do that, and a lot of knowledge too. And for these groups to have been doing it for this long, and for us not to hear about any of them being captured. When have we heard about a cyber attack group, one of these large groups, getting captured? We haven't heard about that. We've heard about them attack and get millions and millions and millions. Doesn't it seem like by now that if they're smart enough to do all these attacks, they would have probably cut their losses and took off after they've made, millions and millions of dollars? Why keep doing it? But there's so much more going on there. And unfortunately, with that, we're the victims of all that. I mean, we're the victims. The governments of the world are not the victims. They come out and they talk about, they talk a good game, or they try to, but we're the ones that's going to end up suffering by paying inflated rates that we're paying now. They're going to go up way more before the end of the year. They're continually rising every day. We're going to be the ones that deal with the shortages. Do you think anybody in the White House is going to have to go without gasoline, or have to go without food, or have to go without running water, heat, or cool, air conditioner. Nobody there is going to be able to, is going to have to go through that. So it's us. We're the ones that's going to be affected by this. Everybody we know, the people around us, our families, our friends. All right. I also want to read a statement by Vladimir Putin here. Vladimir Putin. This is right after the incident couple of weeks ago, where the Russian warship, Russia apparently fired at one of England's warships, and they, supposedly warning shots. And there's a lot of contradiction there. Say Russia says they did it, Britain says they didn't do it. But Russian President Vladimir Putin said last week that the incident with the Defender wouldn't have triggered a global conflict even if Russia had sunk the British vessel, because the West knows it can't win such a war. That statement appeared to indicate Putin's resolve to raise the stakes should a similar incident happen again. And that's a pretty bold statement there. And he's basically saying that, we can't beat him, is what he's saying with that statement. And Russia and China have been spending a lot of money on their militaries. They're getting close to the budget that we're spending on our militaries. And it's, it's going to lead to a lot more. All right. The door-to-door knocking, door-to-door vaccines. This is just ridiculous. And there's been a lot of controversy about it. And no matter what anybody feels about the vaccine, this type of invasion, shouldn't be possible. And it's really just a precursor to something more, most likely. So I'm going to read here a couple of things. North Carolina Republican Madison Cawthorn has said the Biden administration's plan for expanded vaccination information could be used to take people's guns and Bibles. In an interview on Friday with conservative news outlet in Dallas, Texas, Cawthorn said, excuse me, now they're starting to talk about going door to door to be able to take the vaccines to the people. All right. Now I want to step back or think back to the press conference the other day. And I think it was yesterday, as a matter of fact, the press secretary for the administration was pretty adamant about, we're not keeping records of who's got the vaccine and who doesn't. And that in itself, I just don't believe that. I believe they are keeping records of it. And by some of the other statements that she makes that we're going to read off here, it's almost evident that they are keeping records of who's getting the vaccine and who's not. All right, now let's go back to right here. All right, so the president, Biden, this is just quoting him real quick. Now we need to go community by community, neighborhood by neighborhood, and often door by door, literally knocking on doors to get help to the remaining people. The grassroots component of the vaccination campaign has been in operation since April, when supplies of shots began outpacing demand. It was outlined and funded by Congress in the $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill passed in March. And, that's sort of odd because, they never really made any big deal, or we never heard anything about this particular program being in that stimulus package or that $1.9 trillion, COVID relief bill. I don't recall on any of the news until, well after it was passed and people had got their monies and all. I just heard recently, it hasn't been too long ago, about this right here. The Biden administration wants to knock on your door to see if you're vaccinated, tweeted Ohio Republican Jim Jordan. What's next? Knocking on your door to see if you own a gun. And, that's a very good, statement there, because it can't really be just about the vaccine. I mean, it's about more than that. And, if we think back, the last time in the United States that the government went house to house knocking on doors was Katrina. And during that time, they literally did take people's firearms. So I'm not saying that's what they're going to do with this thing, but a lot of things just don't add up here. A lot of things just don't add up. McMaster, my governor from South Carolina, asked his state's healthcare department to bar state and local health groups from the use of the Biden administration's targeted door-to-door tactics. A South Carolinian's decision to get vaccinated is a personal one for them to make and not the government's, McMaster wrote in a letter to the department. Enticing, coercing, intimidating, mandating, or pressuring anyone to take the vaccine is a bad policy which will deteriorate the public's trust and confidence in the state's vaccination efforts. And in Missouri, Governor Mike Parson tweeted, I have directed our health department to let the federal government know that sending government employees or agents door to door to compel vaccination would not be an effective or a welcome strategy in Missouri. And earlier in the week, Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich, I believe is how you pronounce that, sent a letter to Biden condemning the new strategy. And I'm going to read that letter in just a minute. Now, the White House goes on to say, and before I read this, though, let's think back. Jen Psaki, whatever her name is, the who speaks for Biden up there, she came out and, on the last press conference, which I believe was Friday that I saw this, it might have been Thursday, but she come out and stated and blatantly stood behind this statement. We are not keeping track, nor do we want to keep track of who's got the vaccine and who has not got the vaccine. Well, this is her statement right here too. Let me make sure I read it all. All right. When South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster tried this week to block door-to-door efforts to the drive-up vaccination rate in the state, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki did not mince words in her reaction. Her quote, the failure to provide an accurate public health information. Okay. So the failure to provide that information, including the efficacy of vaccines and the accessibility of them to people across the country, including South Carolina, is literally killing people. So she's saying that they're killing people. That's pretty bad. But right there, that statement right there to me, the failure to provide accurate public health information. Okay. How, if you're going to say you're not keeping track of who is getting the vaccine and who is not, then what type of public health information are you talking about? I mean, seriously, what type of health information are you talking about? So if it's just, it's this double standard. And she says something that is really also very concerning or disturbing. It really bothers me. Let me say right here. All right. I'm going to read off the letter that I spoke of a moment ago. Dear President Biden, your administration's decision to go door to door to coerce individuals to receive a COVID-19 vaccine is deeply disturbing and violates the privacy of Americans. The private health information of millions of Americans should never be a matter of concern for the federal government. Americans must be free to make their own personal health choices. On July 6, 2021, you delivered remarks from the White House and made the following statement. Now we need to go community by community, neighborhood by neighborhood, and oftentimes door to door, literally knocking on doors to get help to the remaining people protected from the virus. That same day, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki delivered a similar message during the White House press briefing. She outlined 5 areas that your COVID-19 response team is prioritizing, with priority 1 being community by community, door by door outreach to get remaining Americans vaccinated by ensuring they have the information they need. She also discussed your administration's decision to use, these are the exact words from Jen Psaki, or this is the letter, but this is a quote of what she said. She also discussed your administration's decision to use strike forces to travel into local communities and apply pressure to get 12 to 18-year-olds vaccinated. And that's coming from the White House. And these statements provoke a serious concern that the federal government is in the process of identifying and tracking the private health information of millions of Americans. There is no scenario where the federal government should be actively entered entering communities and traveling door to door to pressure Americans to receive a vaccine. COVID-19 vaccine information is widely available through the country, and it is. Anybody that wants a vaccine, all you got to do is just go on the internet or go anywhere or go to your local, drugstore. Everybody knows that. So, nobody needs this. It's not like this is a necessary service. And Americans have every ability to decide for themselves whether or not they should receive a vaccine. And I stand beside what he wrote right there, because this door to door is not right. This door to door is wrong. That anybody in the community, and they're trying to say, well, it's not going to be government employees. Well, that's even worse. Or however you look at it, some stranger coming up to my door, starting to ask me personal questions. Well, there's no telling how I'm going to react, but it's not going to be politely, most likely, because it's none of their business. And, I'm not going to tell them anything. I'm just going to tell them to turn around, go away, or take it whatever way you want to take it, I reckon. But it's ridiculous that this is even being enacted. And now we see that the funding was actually hidden in that COVID-19 relief package. So the funding for this. So now they're saying we're not using government entities. We're going to use people from the community. Well, then why do you need millions of dollars in funding if you're going to use volunteers from the community? Nothing adds up with that. Nothing adds up with a lot of things we've seen this year. And there's so much going on. It's almost hard to keep track of it all. And I think maybe that's what they're doing, is they're flooding us with everything. They flood us with bits and pieces, just enough to pique your interest, I guess, make you start looking at it. And then you can't find much else on it, a lot of the things. There's so much hidden, but there's so much that we do see. It's a really, really, it's turning into a really serious situation with the cyber polygon wrapped up basically now. And that helps. I mean, you think about the exercise itself. It's an exercise to attack a supply chain. And the information I was reading today, who they picked to be the red team in the cyber polygon was the Buy.Zone, the Russian information security company. So those were the ones that were doing the attacking in this scenario. And there were a lot of other companies involved on the defense side. Now, Jen Psaki, I want to find her quote here. I may not be able to find it. Yeah, and here's her exact quote. Our work doesn't stop there, and we're going to continue to press to get 12 to 18-year-olds vaccinated. That's one of the reasons why we initiated these strike forces. So that was her, exact quote right there. I was looking all over the internet, and I couldn't find any information, really, not anything substantial about the actual strike forces she's talking about. But they're, I'm sure they're not assault teams, of course, it's not anything like that, but they're information gathering teams. These people that are going to be coming door to door, you obviously know that if they're doing that if they're willing to go along with that and go door by door, knocking on people's doors and violating their privacy and their home, basically, that what side that they're supporting at this point. So it's something that, we see that's starting to happen. I know it's already happening in Detroit. I read a few articles today, and I live about 35 miles, something like that, outside of Detroit. But the door knocking over there is already begun in Detroit. There are several articles on it, and that they said that they were treating it like an emergency because Detroit has a very low vaccination rate. So they're treating it like an emergency. And they said time is basically of the essence on it. And they're, got a lot of teams deployed there. And the teams, from what I saw from that article, are teams of two. And they're dressed in civilian attire. They don't look military. They don't look police or anything like that. So, the people that are doing this, they're going right along with it. And that's the kind of thing we have to, be careful of, is who we let know what we got, because, I'm on YouTube, so they know what I got, but you got to be careful, with the security. You got to be careful when these people do come, because at some point, from what they're saying, they're going to come knocking on everybody's door. Everybody here right now, they're going to come knocking on your door. Whether you answer or not, it's going to be different for every situation. I know they're going to come knocking on mine before long. And, I'm just going to basically shut it in their face myself, because they have no legal right to be on my property. And once I tell them to turn around and leave, if they don't, then, at that point, I can't really do anything, but I can shut my door and make them go away. It's it's really concerning, because these kind of tactics, they're not using these to push. And I don't think that they're really pushing the vaccine with this. This door to door is really more or less for them to get a feel for who's there, for them to get a feel about your attitude towards the vaccine, about your attitude towards all this in general. Because I guarantee you, when they come up, they're going to be asking some really, really odd questions. They're probably going to be asking you, they may even ask if you've got firearms in your home. You never know. I had a doctor ask me that once. I took my kid to him. It's been about 7 or 8 years ago. Took my kid to him just for a regular checkup. And it was the first time at that doctor's office. And that was one of the first things he asked. We're having to fill out this questionnaire. And he asked me, he said, I have to know, do you have any guns in your house? I said, well, that's none of your business. And we left right then. My son didn't even finish the examination. We left and never went back, because that's none of his business. It's none of his business at all. So we are when some, it's not too late. I don't want to be one of those that's saying, oh, we're all going to die, because we're not all going to die. We're going to go through some tough times, but we're going to make it. And the reason we're going to make it is because we're prepared. And even though everybody in here is all over the world and all over the country, I'm pretty sure that, we would stand together. People will stand together. You will have people that will stand with you. I'll have people that will stand with me, and things will be, things will work out for us in the end. But it is going to be a long, hard ride until then, most likely. And be honest, I'm just hoping it's not so much me that I worry about, but these kids these days. You think about kids, especially young kids, when you start talking about 6 and 7 and under that, they're young, that it's not affecting them as much as it is like teenagers and preteens. Those are the ones that are growing up in a world that they're being taught to hate right now. They're being taught to hate, and they're being taught to hate on so many different levels. Look at the different types of division, political, religious, economic. I mean, there's so many types of division going on that you could look at, if you believed all this stuff, you could look at anybody out there and you'd have a reason to hate them, because there's that many different types of division going on in this nation. And it's one of those things that, this young generation, I guess we're just going to have to work with them and do the best we can. But, a lot of them aren't going to fall for it, but a lot of them are. And we're seeing that. And it's not really their faults, because they're being indoctrinated in our schools. And this has been going on longer than we realize. It's been going on a lot longer than we realize. All right. The UN, the UN's ATT, their Armed Trade Treaty. All right. And I want to touch on one thing before that, and that's the Agenda 21. All right. Now, we know Agenda 21 is the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and it's a resolution adopted by the UN General Assembly. Now, that was originally adopted back in 2015, and it was focused on achieving 17 goals within 15 years. But there was a high-level political forum, which was, they called it the HLPF, I think it was. And it took place this week. It took place almost simultaneously as Cyber Polygon 2021. And the things that come out of this were basically the UN is saying that they must speed up. They must speed up their things they have in process, and said that 2021 and 2022, if you look up HLPF, you'll be able to find this. And it says 2021 and 2022 will be their busiest years ever, that they're going to work harder than ever at achieving their goals starting now. So they're wanting to move the time frame up. A quick look for those that aren't familiar with the 17, what they call Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. You'll hear me refer to SDG, reading this a lot, and that's what it refers to. And these are basically 17 individual goals that the UN has for the world. The UN, All right, so I'm just going to read it. Number 1 is to end all poverty in all forms everywhere. Well, that sounds great. That sounds great. But that's about the extent of that agenda. I mean, there's nothing concrete, nothing substantial put into place, except for one of the ways that they talk about ending poverty and making people equal like that is redistribution of wealth. And redistribution of wealth, sounds like a good thing to some people, but redistribution of wealth really isn't, because that's taking from some and giving to others to try and equalize that. But the thing is with that, the thing is this: if you have a group of people that make X amount of money and you have a group of people that make 3X amount of money, okay, you might redistribute that wealth. Okay, you redistribute the wealth. Okay, you give these people over here that only have 1X, and these people over here had 3, so you take 1 from them, so they both got 2X now. All right, so it's even. Well, what about next year? Because obviously, if this set of people had 3X, and maybe they was working 2 jobs, maybe they work a lot of overtime, and maybe the reason somebody had only 1X was because they weren't working as much, or in some cases they don't have a job. In some cases they can't help it. I'm not saying anything bad about anybody, but is that going to happen again next year? If I make more money than you, then are they going to take my money and split it with you? I mean, that's what redistribution is. That's the core of it right there. Number 2, the SDG number 2 is to end hunger, achieve food security, and improved nutrition and promotable sustainable agriculture. I have spent, I think earlier this week, like Monday or Tuesday, I said I was going to do a live stream on talking about the NWO and talking about this. And I've read 200 or 300 documents since then. I mean, I was quite familiar with the subject before this week, but since I'm sitting at home now, I had plenty of time to kill. And I've read more this week about the UN, the Arms Trade Treaty, and the NWO. And I'm not reading conspiracy theory websites. I'm reading their documents. I print this off from their page, not from something I typed up. Everything I'm talking about here is their words. And it's very surprising because they're so vague in some areas. And then when you start digging, it's really concerning, because when they start talking about things and when they say stuff like end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture, that sounds good. It sounds good on paper. But when you start reading into the documents, you'll see that basically goes back to the redistribution of wealth theory. And you're talking about redistribution of goods and supplies. The goal of the UN, you can read in the document, and it really isn't hard to even figure out. The goal is basically having every country in the world behave like states in the nation, to where each state could have their own little sets of regulations and rules that are a little different. But all of the states, all of the countries in the world have to abide by the rules that the UN set out. And in the document, in the Arms Trade Treaty, and we're going to look at the Small Arms Trade Treaty here in a minute, I'm going to read some key points from it. And it clearly states in there that the countries will follow the guidelines and the laws and the regulations set forth by the United Nations. The United Nations has a Council for Disarmament as part of the Small Arms Treaty. Now, we hear the words disarmament and we think nuclear weapons, nuclear weapons. But the Small Arms Treaty speaks specifically about civilian types of weapons, and these are just your pistols and your rifles. And they talk about how the UN will define what makes a firearm legal or illegal. They get to define that. And the UN has already put out in their own documentation that they want to confiscate firearms from civilians. They think the police, military, and of course, politicians and their bodyguards can have firearms, but civilians do not need firearms. This is a threat to global security and a human rights threat, I believe is how they classified it too. Now, I'm going to post in the community section on the channel. I'm going to post a lot of these documents, and so that you can read them. I know a lot of people don't want to read through because some of them are pretty long, but I'm going to post them so that you can read through them and you can see that, the things we're talking about here is straight from the documents. I don't have to make it up. I don't have to talk about conspiracy theories. It's all right here. And they laid it out in paper in front of us. They just hide it. They bury it. They'll have 20 to 30 pages that are just basically the same little thing over and over. And then you finally get to a page where they talk about, yes, and for all this, you will follow the UN laws, regulations, and guidelines that are laid out by the UN, and that applies to all countries in the world. So, I mean, it's definitely obvious what they're trying to do. And number 3 is just as vague: ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. SDG number 4: ensure inclusion and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. What's happening to our education here in the United States right now? I mean, what's happening? Right now, our education is being hijacked. And this is after we've seen it go to crap over the last few years, just to put it bluntly. I mean, our education system is not number 1 in the world. We're not even close. And it's going down more every day. And we don't even have to get into any of the debatable subjects about it. We just have to look at the quality of it. And it is falling down. When the UN talks about global education, do you think that the people in the United States, if we are under UN control, which if they have their way, we will be, do you think that the people of the United States would have an education that taught them about their country and about the way of life here, and have an education similar to what we have? And then someone in China have an education that teaches them, what they need to know over there? No, the UN wants to dictate this. And basically, like if we think back to Common Core, basically like that, one standard for education worldwide. In this case, what's going to happen is nations are going to forget their identities. People are going to forget their histories. And pretty soon we'll have a generation that just believes the NWO and the one world government are the only way. And this education is probably the most dangerous of it all, because it's taking our children and our grandchildren and nieces and nephews, it's taking them away from us and making them not only lose respect for us, but possibly even dislike us in some cases. And this is one of the things that, bothers me the most. I got 4 sons, and it just bothers me, and it should bother everybody. All right. Number 5. Achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. It's great. Some of these goals, of course, everybody's going to agree with. I think, a woman should have the same opportunity I have, just vice versa, as far as, jobs and things like that go. I ain't into some of the other stuff, but number 6, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. And once again, how do you think about this? Okay. All right. I know that governments are very inefficient. As being in the military, I see how inefficient the government was. And as I got older, I even see now how inefficient the government is, even to a higher degree. So do you think that the governments of the world are going to be able to work together to ensure sustainable management of water and sanitation for all? The only way things like this, the only possible way, absolute only possible way these goals can be enacted is if there is one controlling body for the entire world. Otherwise, nobody will be equal on this list. There will always be one nation that has something better than the other. For us all to be equal, as they put it, or the same, then it has to be one controlling body. That's the only way that you could enact the same laws worldwide, is if one body controls the entire world. And, it's no secret that's what they're doing. All right, that was number 6. Number 7, ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Number 8, promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. All right. And this, we're all for everybody having a good life. But when we start thinking about, all right, some of the things that are said in here, especially the next one that goes along with it, next couple: build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation, reduce inequality, number 10, within and among countries. All right. So once again, it's inequality. And what we have to think about here is that they're not talking about racial equality. It's not that. That's not what they're talking about. They're not talking about equality as far as me having the same rights as you. What they're talking about is all of us following the same laws equally, that these laws will apply to everyone in the world, basically. And that's what they're going after. And bad news is that's what they're achieving. Number 11, to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Number 12, ensure sustainable consumption and product patterns. And that's sort of, I was looking into that one too, and that one is really, really vague. Number 11, oh, no, I already read that. Number 13, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Number 14, conserve and sustainability, use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. So when you read more into that aspect, I don't mean read more into it as far as just use my imagination, but I mean read more of the documentation on that particular SDG. And once again, that same type of framework is set. It's basically to where all bodies of water, they want to set, of course, different regulations for a lake than an ocean. But what I'm saying is all lakes in the world will have the same set of regulations and guidelines, and all oceans and seas in the world will have the same regulations and guidelines. And these regulations and guidelines from their own documentation says that the UN will determine these. They will be implemented by the UN, and it will be up to the countries and localities and regions within those countries to enforce these laws. And they also have forces. There's an global urbanization force, something to that effect. I'll have to read and look at that again. But they also have teams, what they call them, that will go to every nation, that will be stationed in every nation, basically like UN forces, that will be the controlling, that will determine, be the controlling factors there. So we're going to have to answer to the UN if this doesn't, come to an end sometime soon. Okay. Number 14, conserve and, no, that was already read it. Number 15, protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forest, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. So, the loss of different species of animals, the loss of, when they say land degradation, and some of the things they're saying there, what they're talking about is expansion. And think about when we expand, we have to, basically cut down trees. We have to take more land, build more cities, do things like that. And this is also what they're trying to restrict, trying to control. Now, how would they be able to control, keep humans, basically, like it says, human settlements, keep us within a certain perimeter? Then they're going to have to legally do that. So if they want to restrict humans within certain areas so that we don't use up any more of the land, then that's going to require one more thing. And that's going to require a reduction in the population. The population can't continue to grow the way that it's growing and remain in the same areas we're in. We're going to expand. So with that one, it tells us that there may be something else. I mean, we know that could be very concerning. Number 16, promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. And the final one, number 17, strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. And revitalizing the global partnership for sustainable development. These are the sustainable development goals. They use that term a lot, and that term ties into everything from Event 201 to Cyber Polygon 2020 to Cyber Polygon 2021 to the Global Reset. It's used in all of those documents. If you read any of the documents from any of those, and all of the websites do have documents that you can download a lot from. Now, there are SDGs include the 17 goals that we spoke about, plus an additional 169 targets. Now, that is in the documentation. I'm not going to bore you to death with 169 different targets, but I think we're starting to see the scope of this right now. We're starting to see the scope of it. And it's really, like I always say, it's really concerning. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the arms trade. We see what they're doing there. And when I was looking up, the arms trade treaty and looking up about how the UN feels about guns, which I already knew, but I was trying to find a lot of documentation on it. And what I'll be reading here from is the small arms treaty. This is relating to handheld weapons. This is not relating to any type of nuclear weapons or any type of even grenades or any type of what we would really consider weapons of war. 50 caliber automatic machine guns, tanks, things like that. It relates only to weapons that can be held by the civilian population. So I'm gonna read that. Let me make sure I got the right one. There you go. So many papers over here today. This is the entire program of action to prevent, combat, and eradicate the illicit trade in small arms and light weapons in all of its aspects. And it's a pretty thick. This is just one part of it. And as you can see, this one's like 30 pages long. I got some key points. I just want to read a couple of the things off in here because it's very, very long. All right. One of the things in here is the word illicit, which we deem as illegal, but illicit is not illegal. That doesn't say illegal trade in small arms and light weapons. And that's a distinction that matters because they define the term illicit. And it lays out in the guidelines here. They don't give a definition. They said the definition of it will be determined by the UN and they expect every country in the world to adhere to those regulations. And that's right here in this document. So the term illicit is a term they substitute for illegal because most people will look at this and they'll say, oh yeah, we want to prevent illegal firearms, illegal guns from getting out there. Well, that's not what they're saying. They're saying they're going to determine what makes a gun legal or illegal. And from reading this document, there's mainly one main thing that's going to do that, and that's whether are you employed by the government or are you a civilian. And I'm going to read a few of these. Gravely concerned. All right, in the preamble here, it has a lot of things where they say gravely concerned about this. All right, gravely concerned about the illegal manufacture illicit manufacture, transfer, and circulation of small arms and light weapons, and their excessive accumulation and uncontrolled spread, which have a wide range of humanitarian and socioeconomic consequences and pose a serious threat to peace, reconciliation, safety, security, stability, and sustainable development at the individual, local, national, regional, and international levels. In this document, what I found interesting about this and the other documents that come along with the ATT, what I find interesting about this is it breaks it down and it gives instructions on a global level, it gives instructions on a country level, and it gives instructions on a local level. So this is laying out how things will be handled from your city to worldwide. And this is, like I said, I'm not going to read it all because as you can see, there's a lot of pages, but I'll put these links up on the channel in the community tab so that everybody can access it because I want y'all to read these. This is number 21 in here. Convinced of the need for a global commitment to a comprehensive approach to promote at the global, regional, sub-regional, annual, national, and local levels the prevention, reduction, and eradication of small arms and light weapons. Number 20, resolve, therefore, to prevent, combat, and eradicate illicit trade in small arms and light weapons in all aspects by, and it gives a list of things, strengthening development agreed norms, developing and implementing agreed international measures to prevent, combat, and eradicate illicit manufacturing. Now, illicit manufacturing, I don't, maybe I'm just crazy, But I don't think there are that many manufacturing facilities in the world that are illegally manufacturing firearms. I mean, it seems like if that was truly a problem, it would be something that we were aware of. Now, yeah, I can go out here to my shop and I can take a half-inch lead pipe and I can shoot a 50 caliber bullet through it. But I don't think that that's what they're referring to here, although that probably would fall into the same category. Illicit manufacturing. Basically, to me, what that's saying is the companies that don't agree with them and don't comply with them are going to be illicit now. And that is deemed, once again, by the UN. At the national level, this is one of the ones at the national level, to adopt and implement in the states that have not already done so. And when it refers to states here, it's talking about countries. The necessary legislative or other measures to establish criminal offenses under their domestic law for the illegal manufacture, possession, stockpiling, and trade of small arms and light weapons within their jurisdiction in order to ensure that those engaged in such activities can be prosecuted under appropriate national penal codes. And there are multiple paragraphs on here that talk about the same things. And what this is talking about here is that countries are going to have to adopt the laws that the UN set. They're basically laying it out how countries have to enforce the laws, that the UN decides they're going to pass when they think they're far enough along in this agenda to actually take over the world. To adopt where they do not exist and enforce all the necessary measures to prevent the manufacture, stockpiling, transfer, and possession of any unmarked or inadequately marked small arms. To put in place and implement adequate laws, registrations, and administrative procedures to ensure the effective control and transit of small arms and light weapons, including the use of authenticated end-user certificates and effective legal and enforcement measures. To ensure that all confiscated, seized, and collected small arms and light weapons are destroyed, subject to any legal constraints associated with the preparation of criminal prosecutions, unless another form of discipline, is offered. All right. To develop and implement, including in conflict and post-conflict situations, public awareness and confidence building programs on the problems and consequences of trade in small arms and light weapons in all aspects, including where appropriate, the public destruction of surplus weapons and the voluntary surrender of small arms and light weapons. To develop and implement, where possible, effective disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration programs. To develop and implement, where possible, effective disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration programs, including the effective collection, control, storage, and destruction of small arms and light weapons. I'm not making this stuff up. At the global level, to cooperate with the United Nations system to ensure the effective implementation of arms embargoes decided by the United Nations Security Council. United Nations Security Council. To request the Secretary General of the United Nations within existing resources through the Department of Disarmament Affairs. Part of the small arms thing, within the small arms, because the UN, as I've been researching this, I've never seen so many acronyms in my life. The deeper I dig, it's like there's more and more and more organizations. Now, this one organization, the Department for Disarmament Affairs, a lot of people will say, well, that's for nuclear disarmament. And yes, that originally was, but it now has a division for small arms and what they call small arms and, small weapons. So there's that division of it. And that's what they're referring to right here from this document. All right. To encourage the United Nations Security Council to consider on a case-by-case basis the inclusion where applicable of relevant provisions for disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration in the mandates and budgets of peacekeeping operations. And I could go on. I mean, I could really just keep going on. But the word disarmament, I did a search, in this one document is used 18 times. So in one document, they use the word disarmament 18 times. And they group so many of this out. Countries are encouraged to use and support, including by providing relevant information on small arms and light weapons, to Interpol's International Weapons and Explosive Tracking System database and any other relevant database that may be developed for this purpose. So tracking what arms are out there. And it goes on. And I'm not going to bore you guys to death with just reading 20 to 30 more pages of that, but it's very repetitive in what it's saying. And, that's what's really bothersome, I guess you would say, about it is that the information is there. And in this document, it literally lays it out. It literally tells us that you can summarize this up as basically saying the UN is going to make the rules from here on out. These rules will apply to everyone in the world from here on out. One of the things they're going to do is take your guns. The other thing they're going to do is, unless you're filthy rich, part of the elite, if you're middle class, they're going to take your money and they're going to distribute it. And healthcare, education, everything being globalized, everything being controlled by one world government. And how are they going to finance all that? That's what a lot of people might ask, how do you finance all that? Well, the G20 just happened to meet not very long ago. As a matter of fact, today and yesterday, the world's financial leaders met, the G20, on July 9th and 10th, setting a deal to incorporate a global minimum corporate tax and call for technical work to be finished so they can approve the framework for implementation in October of this year. All right, now this is, let's see, it made no mention of a specific rate for a global minimum corporate tax, nor other key details which remain to be agreed by nearly 140 countries, known as the Inclusive Framework meeting online in the next few weeks in talks hosted by the Paris-based Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The world's top economic leaders convened on Friday to hash out crucial details of what will be the largest overhaul of the international tax system in a century, kicking off a 3-month race to finish the deal by the end of the year. And they just said they want to finish it by October. Quote, "A few big weeks and months are ahead," said Pascal Saint-Amans, director of the Center for Tax Policy and Administration at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. How many daggum names do they have to have? Right. He is overseeing the talks. In a brief interview ahead of the summit, he said that. All right. The meetings follow a breakthrough in negotiations last week when 130 countries backed a conceptual framework for the new tax plan. The blueprint includes a global minimum tax of at least 15% that each country would adopt, and new rules that would force technology giants and other big global businesses to pay taxes in countries where their goods and services are sold, even if they have no physical presence there. So this is doing two things. This is going to do two things. It's going to make you pay country taxes, or not you, but companies pay country taxes in countries where they might happen to sell products at. People might be buying these products online. They might be buying these products online, and they're having to pay taxes. Now they're going to have a 15%, or that's the number that they're saying right now, 15% global economic tax put on them. Global economic tax. All right, so if they're going to be taxed globally, with a global economic tax, then where does that money go? That money is going to go to help fund Agenda 2021 or Agenda 21. It's going to go to fund that. It's going to go to fund all of the things that we see, in here. all the things that we've been talking about. All right. So we got a lot of things going on. I mean, it's getting pretty crazy. 1 second. Yeah, it's getting pretty crazy. I mean, like I had said at the beginning of the live stream, we're on a roller coaster. Most roller coasters are supposed to be fun, but this one ain't all that fun. And we're on the upside of that big hill right at the beginning, and we're gonna reach that pinnacle. We're gonna reach that plateau at top, and there's nowhere to go but down from there. And that's where we're headed now. I think we're right near the apex of it, the top of it. There's too much that's going on. Yeah, the UN has already talked about they're speeding up their efforts to implement this agenda. They're speeding up their efforts. The We saw the cyber polygon go on. We saw the high level political forums go on. We see all this go on. The global tax that's going to be or not hopefully, but they hope they'll have implemented by October of this year. What will a global tax do to us locally? Well, a global tax affects every company in the world, at least to my understanding. I'm sure there's some exemptions to that. I don't know the exact, ins and outs of that one. That one's sort of, I need to go deeper in, but still, even if it affects only half the companies, it doesn't matter. These, with an increase 15% in taxes, there's only two ways companies are gonna be able to recoup those losses, and companies are going to be able to afford to stay open. One, replace their employees with robots, and you know what? That's happening. It's happening in places you wouldn't expect it to be happening in. Got an inquiry not long ago about installing robots at a marijuana rolling factory. Believe it or not, I was like, well, I've been working with robots a while, and that would be the first time I'd ever program one to do that. But that's true. Wash cars, car washes. How you got people at the car washes. Won't be for long anymore. This is coming around. The larger manufacturing facilities already see it, and it's already happening in there, and it's trickling out to the smaller businesses now. And there would be many more businesses doing it, but the cost of robots is so expensive right now. You're looking at 50 to 100 grand for a really good system that can operate on its own and give you some kind of remote capabilities to it. But it's coming. That's coming. And the other way, if they don't have the money to do that right away, well, they get that money because prices are going to go up. We're already seeing inflation. I mean, at it's higher than it's been in 6 years, and these prices are going to go up, especially if this global tax is implemented. And this global tax is going to benefit the UN because it's going to allow them to push their goals. But us, it's going to hurt us. It's going to break us. You think if everything you own, I mean, think about how much things have already went up. Add another 15% on top of that. And companies aren't going to just add 15% on the end cost for that product. It's probably going to be 20-25% increase. So we're seeing some pretty tough times coming up. All right. Well, we've been going a little bit. We're going to do a couple giveaways right here. And so like I want to say some things on the channel. The grid down video, the final chapter, I got sidetracked this week, and that's going to be coming out this week. Absolutely. I'm going to keep up trying to do some updates. I'm trying to get deeper into a lot of these subjects and get some information that, isn't really made public is what I'm trying to do. And got a lot of cool things coming up. Some good product reviews of some really cool gadgets. And I got a video, also the bug out bag video that we're going to do a raffle on. How to build a bug out bag, but not only how, but why. Why would we use this product instead of this product? What are the benefits? It's going to be, I won't say extremely in depth or, hour long or nothing, but want to really get into it. And I know that you guys know what you're doing, but some people will watch it and they don't really know what they're doing. So it's going to get deeper into some of the areas as to why you should have this. This is why we pick these 10 items or 20 items. And it's going to be a really nice bag. I've got some really good equipment that's going to go in it. Solar powered and hand powered radio, really nice knife that's going in there, water filters, first aid kit, a lot of good stuff can be in it. So check that out. And that one will be out this week too. But what do you say? Y'all ready to do a prize giveaway? Let's do one. All right. All right. Y'all know how we do them here. Oh, Mike, the Mothman's there in West Virginia. Huh? I caught the tail end of that conversation. So, all right. So, y'all know how we do the giveaways. The first one will be the first aid kit. First one will be the first aid kit. It's never been opened. Decent kit, 250 items. I mean, this is something, you could put in your car and keep around the house. A good, solid little kit. You're not going to stitch up gunshot wounds or nothing like that with it. But it's, hey, it's a good little kit. All right. So as soon as I type in go, the number will be between 1 and 100. The first person that gets it will win. And you can only win once tonight. You can win next week again, too. But only the same winner can't win twice in one night. All right, and I'm going to type in as soon as you see my go. And there we go. Hey, QCat, I'm getting a solar cooker. I'm going to be doing a review on it. Oh, close. Somebody got really close. Oh, somebody got it. Somebody got it. Let me scroll back up. We got to see who that was. Skyrider 702. The number 50. Number 50, Skyrider. All right, so I'm going to type your name right here. Skyrider 702. I typed it wrong. I get some new glasses. These are scratched up now. Skyrider 702. Email me at survivor@SeriousSurvivor.com. Right, email me there, Skyrider, and I'll get you a product. I'll be shipping these out this coming up Friday. I'll be shipping them out this coming up Friday. All right. Well, now let's do the second one. The second one is this is a pretty sturdy. I mean, I give it credit. It's a really well made web belt. They call it a survival belt. A pretty strong magnetic buckle. It releases by pulling this tab right here, but then it just goes right back into place, just like that. And I got one I keep in my gear, and I've wore it around several times, and it holds good. I mean, that holds good because it's not just magnetic where it sits on top of it. It actually it locks into place. If you look at the mechanism there, and then this mechanism, it locks into place like that. Really easy, and it holds. I mean, it holds really well. All right, so after I type in go, give me just 1 second. All right. Oh, somebody was really close. Oh, there we go. Mike Malone. The number 4. Mike, you are a winner. So let me put that in there. Mike Malone. Email me at survivor@SeriousSurvivor.com. I spelled email wrong. All right. Congratulations, Mike, on that. Congratulations to both of the winners tonight. And, I hope everybody enjoyed the show. For what we talk about, I mean, it's crazy sometimes, but, it's better to know what we're up against than to be caught or blindsided. I'd rather know what's going on around me than, to walk around and think everything's okay when we see, what it's leading to. We see a lot of these things. Now, we're not, we're not doomed, but we are in a tight spot. We're on a little tough spot. And it's going to come down pretty soon as to whether or not all of the regular folks like us stand together and make a difference. It's going to come down to that. And it's going to be, it's going to get real like that one day. And wish it wouldn't, but it is. And every country in the world's saying it. Everybody's knows it. It's coming down to something big. And guys, make sure you keep your car tanks full of gas. I keep a few gas jugs that I keep full. I've been topping mine off every day. And, make sure that you got a few extra dollars, get that extra food, get that, the water purification. I think water would be one of the last things to go, unless, you got to take into consideration. Some places use electric pumps to pump their water. And if you lose power, you're going to lose that water too. A lot of places are like that. All right. So, congratulations. Y'all keep an eye on the channel. I got some really cool videos coming out. Say thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show, and God bless you all. For now, Serious Survivor out.